Welcome to the Side Action Podcast, the sports gambling show that covers everything in the world of sports betting from A through Z. We'll cover the four major sports, as well as anything and everything in between worth some action, and will increase the size of your bankroll. And here we go.
Well, welcome to the Side Action, episode 89, episode 20 of season 3. This is Jim Weglars, a.k.a. Wegs. You can follow me at Wegspo on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm Steve Roberts, a.k.a. Action. You can follow me on Twitter at 31sroberts.
Follow the podcast in these ambulances and Side Action Pod on Twitter and YouTube.
Late tonight. Ambulance is coming around late.
Every 30 minutes. There's been like 5 of them in the last 15 minutes. There's something going on. So I'm fine, America. I know you're worried. You'd be happy to know I'm fine. But,
that's good.
Anyway, so you've been really busy. We're talking about your work schedule, and for those watching on YouTube, yes, I'm still wearing the shirt. I haven't taken it off in 9 days. It's part of my skin now. This is actually my skin right now. But no, I love these things, so I'm just promoting us again. So how was your weekend? I had a tough weekend at the books, buddy. It was a rough one.
Yeah, I was up and down a little bit. Mostly down on Saturday. Although the Packers cover was very nice. We'll talk about that later. We gave a little bit back on Sunday, and college hoops has been a little bit so-so in the last few days. So looking forward to getting back in the black side of things here if we can. How about
absolutely.
you?
Oh, it was a terrible weekend. I think I was 1-5 or 1-4. It was awful.
Yeah,
I only got the only win was the last game. It was I got the Saints Bucks under.
Okay.
Obviously, I had 2 bets on Baltimore, which we'll talk about later, that hurt. And then I had the Chiefs. What did I have on the Chiefs? Yeah, I think I got it at 8. I bought it. I got it at -8, which seemed pretty good in the first half.
Yeah.
And then petered out. I thought it was like, oh, that's really low. It was 10 all week. And I'm like, let's jump on it. And then, yeah, that hurt. So I don't know if maybe it was only one in. Maybe I guess I must have picked another side there, but it's okay. Just gave back the winnings that I won the week before.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get them back this week.
That's right. Well, great. Well, looks like we haven't, usually on this podcast, if you listen to us for the last couple of years, we usually do a segment on, the gaming community and what's going on. We've got a couple of updates because it's been a minute since we've updated, especially in our, in Action's home state now of Michigan, but it looks like you're showing that Virginia also went live on Thursday. So we're up to 21 states where gambling is legal. Why don't you lay out what's going on in Michigan?
Yeah, Virginia, I think that's brand new. Like, first bets were taken today. Michigan, as you know, has been taking bets for quite some time. I think it was even like pre-pandemic, if you can think back to that far. I know it's hard to do, but
I think they beat Illinois to the punch, right? Didn't they beat Illinois to the punch? Right.
Yeah, I think the first day was like the conference basketball tournaments, like March 10th, and then March 11th was the world closed. So they were taking bets and have been at the true casinos and sports books at MGM and Motor City Casino. But finally tomorrow they've agreed on online rules, and all of the online books in the state of Michigan will start taking bets tomorrow, Friday at noon. So it's very exciting. You can bet here from the home office.
That's right. You don't have to leave. You don't have to tell your brother or somebody to take a bet in Indianapolis or wire me funds like you never did that. But you could in person in Illinois. So
for sure. So I mean, a whole slew of operators are popping up tomorrow. I think there's 9 that are going active tomorrow, and the regulations allow for 15 full licenses to take online bets. So I have lots of outs now.
Yeah, and it looks like I don't think I was aware that Barstool had an out. I didn't know Barstool had a platform for betting, so news to me. But you've got BetMGM, which I know you're a big MGM guy in Vegas. I'm sure you got that app. You got BetRivers, which I do here in Illinois. DraftKings and FanDuel, which we all know. Golden Nugget, PointsBet, Twin Spires, William Hill. Gosh, they just opened the floodgates in this one.
Yeah, kind of surprised that I don't recall any of the other Midwest states having such a large offering.
No.
So it's definitely a good thing for us bettors here in Michigan. Barstool actually has their first branded sports book at the Greektown Casino here in downtown Detroit. I know I've seen Portnoy passing through there on Twitter recently. and I think they have one in Pennsylvania as well.
Oh, there you go. Why not? Why not? Spread the joy. Good for them. That's a good avenue. I'm sure they're going to make money on it. So just let those algorithms do the work. It's awesome. Well, let's jump into the episode. We've got the divisional matchup recap here from last week. Maybe not that surprising results. We were on the wrong side in a couple here, but first of all, the Packers took care of business against the Rams. We kind of expected this. I had talked about the Rams maybe around 7. I would buy in, but the line really fell to about 6.5. And honestly, I don't know. I don't think Aaron Donald 100%, but the Packers definitely routed this number one defense. Number one offense beat the number one defense for once, which never happens. 484 total yards and a win of 32-18, so easily covering that number. And it hit the over as a result as well, which is something that may have been something that I lost. I probably had the under in that game. So obviously Green Bay is going to host their first NFC Championship game with Rodgers at the helm, and it should be an exciting game this weekend.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. I was really impressed by Goff and Cam Akers, especially on the other side. I think they played a lot better than I expected, but that Rams defense just couldn't do anything to stop the Packers. Really probably could have been even worse if the Packers got into the end zone a couple more times in the first half. Without that, it would have been a runaway.
Yeah, the Rams could not stop this team. They were going up and down the field, but I agree with you. I've been a Jared Goff hater, basically for the last 3 years. I thought he played really well. Mm-hmm. He acquitted himself well. That we had talked about, he can't throw the ball, and under sub-freezing temperatures was right around that, and he played well despite that thumb. So, not to say he's worth the paycheck, but at the same time, I think he's doing a lot better than, say, a Wentz or a Trubisky at this stage of his career right now. Mm-hmm. The next game we had were the Bills against the Ravens. This was one we were on the wrong side of, and like I said, I took the money line, ended up taking the spread bet, +3, I think. This was a crazy game action. I mean, what can be said? The Ravens D did what they're supposed to do. They slowed down this great Bills offense, the number 2 defense against the number 2 offense. They held them like 220 yards, total yards. That's not 22 dash. It's 220 yards on the outline. And the Ravens moved the ball up and down the field. But they missed 2 field goals, which Tucker never misses. He's missed 3 in 2 weeks then. And then they couldn't get in the end zone. And in the end, the Bills switched the script in the second half and actually ran the ball at the Ravens in that first drive. Got the big touchdown to go ahead 10-3. And Lamar Jackson, it wasn't the worst throw I've ever seen, but he was looking down Andrews the whole way. It's 3rd and goal. Even if you throw it away, you're down 4 points instead. Huge pick 6 by the Bills, and that just turned the game. And obviously Jackson got knocked out with a concussion. So, they turned to the rookie who played okay, but he's like the 4th stringer, and then they end up losing 17-3 outright. So good for the Bills. First AFC title appearance since 1994. That's a long time, actually.
Yeah, that's exciting for Buffalo fans, I'm sure. I was impressed by the Buffalo play calling. I think I saw in the game script that they didn't even run in the first half. Dayball came out and threw on every play. And then to open the second half, they went on like 8 straight rushing plays. So it was masterful by Dayball. And on the flip side, I am surprised that the Ravens weren't able to do more on the ground. I mean, they were doing okay in yards per carry, but for whatever reason, they just couldn't get the ground game going. And ultimately, the pick 6 doomed them.
Yeah. So that one we obviously, was a clear under in that game. So that was an easy call, but the all that money on the Ravens goes for naught. So good for the Bills, and we'll see. It's going to be a matchup of some incredible offenses this weekend and the next game here. So the Chiefs take on the Browns on Sunday. And, we were texting early in this game. It's kind of the script for KC this year. They're just crushing teams in the first half, kind of crushing the spirit. But they really didn't get in the end zone that much. I mean, they were up 19-3. The Browns had that crazy play at the end of the half, almost a touchdown, probably a targeting, not called. The ball goes through the end zone for the touchback. They go to the halftime, 19-3, throw a pick on their first series. It's looking like Cleveland has no shot. And then all of a sudden, Mahomes gets knocked out of this game. He was already hobbled with a toe injury, gets this kind of weird nerve concussion thing we'll talk about later, and the Browns have a shot to win this game. So obviously your cousin Mikey he had been frothing at the mouth, down 22-17, but KC defense held a couple times, and Chad Henne from Michigan, I don't know, they dusted him out of mothballs, and he did enough to get the win, but the Browns do cover the number and the under hits in this game.
Yeah, I ended up on the Browns myself when it got to 10, so I was lucky to cash that ticket. Really aided by the Mahomes injury, I think. But, I mean, the question mark from this game has got to be Mahomes' injury status. I know we'll probably touch on it more later, but I don't think that Henne was doing much. I mean, he threw the one really bad interception in the end zone, which kept the Browns in the game. Oh. You could argue that he kind of sealed the game with that third down scramble that got them into position and then ultimately allowed Andy Reid to call the play to go for it on fourth down, which iced it. So Henne is really much more of a game manager for this team, and I was impressed by the Browns yet again. Got to say it.
Yeah, I mean, they played good. They were in it to win it. They almost had it. I think they're a year away from being really good, but this is great experience for that team, and Cleveland fans got to be excited. I mean, I do think if they would have backed into this win and gone to Buffalo, they probably would have gotten rocked. I mean, that's kind of how I was thinking about this game, but who cares? The playoffs, whatever happens on the field, you got to play the game, and good for you on cashing that Browns ticket. So the last game was the Bucs against the Saints. This was a really interesting game. We were both on the Bucs here, and I didn't actually bet the side. Right before kickoff, I was hearing everybody talk about the Saints. I almost bet them because it was down to like 3, and I'm like, oh, that's the Saints are going to do this, even though they haven't made deep runs in the playoffs the last couple of years. And it kind of looked that way. I mean, the Saints were dominating early in this game. Tampa couldn't do anything against this defense, but a bad Breeze interception in the first half kept them in it, so they get tied at 13 at halftime, and then the Saints come out and score early, take control of the game, have another drive where they looks like they were going to go in for another score potentially, but Jared Cook does not hang on to the football. Ball security fumbles it. Devin White takes it back, not to the house, but puts him in position, and that just changed the whole game. So down 20 to 13, they just score 17 straight points to close out the game. Breeze looked terrible after that in that one bad pick where he was, I don't know I guess it was miscommunication, and then the third one, it really wasn't his fault. It was really Cook again who didn't catch the damn ball, but those four turnovers really cost them, and now Brady's going to go to the NFC Championship game and see if he can get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a fugazi final score here.
Yeah.
I mean, Tampa didn't really do much on offense at all. They scored on short fields every time. Brady didn't even crack 200 passing yards.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure if this win makes me bump them up in the power ratings at all. And, on the flip side, I just feel for Drew Brees, Purdue Boilermaker, and going out like that kind of sucks on a national stage. But it's pretty clear that he couldn't throw the ball down the field, and Tampa's defense keyed in on that. They just couldn't move it at all.
Right. Michael Thomas, 0 catches on the day.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, he couldn't get separation. One thing that we'll talk about in the matchup for the championship, all year the Bucs cornerbacks have played bump and run tight coverage, and really the Saints receivers weren't doing a great job of shaking it. Mm-hmm. Thomas especially. We'll see if that's going to work against Davante Adams, who I think has maybe shows that he's a cut above Thomas, especially after injuries with Thomas, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a matchup. We'll see how that works come Sunday. Let's roll into the previews for the championship. Obviously there's only 2 games to review, so we'll dig in as deep as we can here. We'll go over the odds and the injuries like we've done in the recent weeks with the playoffs here. First game is actually Tampa going to Green Bay, and that's a 3:05. That's is that Central or is that Eastern time?
I think these are Eastern time. Yeah,
okay,
I think
Eastern
it's 3.
Time. So Green Bay being at home at Lambeau, they're opening up as a 4-point favorite and 51-point total. That's kind of trimmed down to a 3-point favorite now and 51-point total. Obviously, there's some interesting injuries in this one. When I look at this, a lot of the wide receivers have injuries. The skill positions on the Bucs side. Godwin has a quad issue. He didn't look quite right on Sunday. He was limited in practice so far. Ronald Jones, also a quad, who's questionable. Mike Evans has been nursing a knee for a few weeks. And then on the defensive side, this Sean Murphy-Bunting, who made the huge interception, cornerback, has a quad injury, limited. And Jason Pierre-Paul, who's been their key pass rusher, his knee is questionable, as well as the free safety. Like Antonio Brown's on there. So there's a lot of people for the Bucs from what I can see. On the Packers side, Will Redmond, the free safety, has a knee issue. He's questionable. Jared Valdier, the offensive tackle, has COVID, so I'm not sure if he's going to make it through the protocol. And then Rick Wagner, the offensive tackle, has a knee issue. He was limited in practice. So do any of those injuries, I think you already said you bet the Packers. So, I mean, do you feel even stronger about it then?
Yeah, I do. I think the two that jump out at me, and I think it was noticeable last weekend too, is Antonio Brown. He just didn't appear to be the same player that he had been the previous few weeks. I had noted in my mind that Tom Brady and Brown seemed to have really made a connection the last few weeks of the season, and he didn't really have that available to him on Sunday. And Chris Godwin is in the same boat. I think he's one of their big possession receivers, and if he's not 100%, that's going to be more difficult on the Tampa offense as well. How about you? Any of these injuries jump out at you?
Well, and I fail to mention that Vita Vea, the big defensive nose tackle, is supposed to return as of yesterday. I do not see any reports that he has actually practiced, though. He's supposed to be returning from the IR, and that would be a big key for me, especially against the run and Aaron Jones. So, going into this game, I did admittedly grabbed the 4 right away for Tampa. So I did like that number for them, especially coming off the big game. Brady's been there. He knows what he's doing. He's got the weapons. That defense, if they play as well as they did on Sunday, I think they can win the game, And I know a lot of sharp people are looking that way, but you've said that you don't think they can, Aaron Rodgers and this offense can be stopped. I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to see a lot in that first quarter because I think that if, LaFleur has his stuff together and he's got a great game plan to get Davante Adams open, great. My biggest fear with Green Bay is I don't really trust their secondary receivers. I mean, last week we talked about how Ramsey was going to be on Adams and he smoked that dude. Honestly, he did. But besides the bump and run stuff that I talked about Tampa, I think that they're just going to play it differently. They're going to put a safety on him or what over the top and make Tanya didn't have a big game. He didn't need to. But I don't think they're going to be able to run on this team. We know that Tampa doesn't give up the run. So I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as this number shows. So I still like 3.5 is probably still too high. If it gets down to 3, then I'd probably go with Green Bay. But I don't like that hook or the 4. I think Brady's going to be there to the end.
Yeah. I feel like that Green Bay is going to be up for revenge, too. If you remember earlier on in the season, that game in Tampa, Green Bay jumped out to a quick 10-0 lead. And then I think Tampa came back and scored 31 unanswered points to beat them handily. So
they did.
I kind of throw that one out. It was a long time ago. And back then, the Packers were riding high. So certainly was a shocker to us at the time. I think we were on Green Bay. But
we were.
I like the Packers in this game. I think their offense is going to be able to move the ball pretty regularly. I know that the Tampa Bay Bucks have the number 1 rush defense, so I think they will be able to bottle up Aaron Jones a little bit. But LaFleur has shown his ability to be creative in the pass game as well, and I think that you'll see Aaron Jones get involved in the passing game, and hopefully MVS and Tanyan can pick up the slack for Adams if he gets locked down. Right.
Okay. Different sides of that one, but it's a tough game to call, I think. The next game is Buffalo going to Kansas City. This is at 6:40 Eastern. Kansas City, we'll talk about their injuries in a minute. They opened as a 2.5-point favorite and a 55-point total. It's up to 3. I've seen anywhere to 3.5 sometimes, and a 54-point total for the Bills coming into town. This one, again, the key injury, we'll start off with the Chiefs since it's a bigger injury, Patrick Mahomes. Now, my understanding is he's basically cleared the protocol. He's already practicing. Mm-hmm. They're saying it was a nerve issue, not a concussion. Right. But I think bigger story in this one, I think, is, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was limited practice. He hasn't been playing lately. Where Le'Veon Bell, who also has a knee issue, he's questionable. I thought the other guy, what's his name, Williams?
Yeah.
I thought he ran really well early in the game, and they kind of went away from it. But it looks like they also might get Sammy Watkins back. He's got he might have played on Sunday, but I didn't see him out there really. He's limited. And then but I saw Rashard Breeland pop up there as well. He was limited. He has a concussion, so he must be through the protocol. So I see a lot of injuries for the Chiefs. On the Bills, it's kind of the same story. It's Diggs oblique, Beasley's knee. They're fighting through injuries. And then the new one is this Vernon Butler, the defensive tackle, who's questionable, which could affect the run game. So with all that, I mean, how are you leaning in this game?
I mean, I don't have an official pick in this game, but to be honest with you, I kind of lean to the Bills. And even with a healthy Patrick Mahomes, I think I would probably lean that direction, catching +3. I think this Buffalo team has shown that they are a covering machine. I mean, looking back at their ATS margin, I think that they failed to cover in just one game out of their last 10, and that was the Colts last week. So,
right.
And on the flip side, you have a Kansas City team who's now not covered in 9 straight games.
That's right.
So I realize that the number is probably a little bit lower than what they're used to laying in these spots, but I think that this Buffalo team is showing an ability on offense to move the ball at will outside of the wind in last week's game. And I'm not really sure that Kansas City's defense will be able to stop them. And I believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to be fine in terms of his head and upper body. I do believe that it was a nerve issue. I was reading on Pro Football Doc. He does like all these super intricate analyses of injuries that he did appear to something just like a very superficial like nerve. And you could tell like right after that, he actually ran off the field.
Right.
So
right. I remember. I
think the toe injury is the bigger question mark in my mind.
Right. Which is funny that they don't list that on the injury report. But so, yeah, I mean, we're totally at odds this week. I think that, first of all, I grabbed the game at -2.5. So I feel like It's a good number. Okay. So for Kansas City, look, I got Kansas City winning the Super Bowl still. I'm still going to be on board. I know what you're saying about covering. They can't cover a game. I don't understand why. It's just weird. I think more times than not, they're just getting the win. And they don't care about the spread, that's for sure. They're winning all these games except for the last game of the year. So it's just this field goal game. It could hit the number. This could be a push. It could be a field goal game. These teams are really good. I just think at some point, and maybe I'm wrong, and I love Allen for president. I've said it many times. I think this game might be too big. At some point, nerves are going to catch up. Of the 4 quarterbacks that are left at this stage, he's the green guy. And he played fine last week. He missed some deep throws. I just think they're gonna figure it out, man. So I like the game under, and I'll tell you why. Most of these playoff games have been fairly under until a couple of weird ones like Washington and stuff. And I mean the Packers ended up going over because they beat that Rams defense. Everybody expects this game to be high. Now I know it opened higher than this. I know we're showing 55. I think it opened more like 56, 57. And has been bet down to 54. But something tells me it's going to be very similar to that Cleveland game where Kansas City is going to move the ball. I mean, the first couple drives Kansas City had in that game, they sucked all the clock out of that game, that first half. I expect something similar from Andy Reid. I heard Pro Football Talk, similar to you. I heard them talking about doing more like an old school West Coast offense where it's a spread attack and just chunk plays, but like dinking and dunking down the field to keep the ball away from Josh Allen. So be interesting if they do that. So I do like the game under 54 personally, but I can understand why you want the side. I mean, in this case, the teams are pretty close, and it should be a great football game.
I'm curious to see if Mahomes is going to be able to get outside the pocket and run like he's shown in every single playoff game that he's played. He's shown that ability. And now with the toe injury, I had him last week on the rushing prop, which didn't get there because of the injury. But I'm probably going to stay away this week just because there's so many unknowns with that toe.
Yeah. The other thing I would say for that handicap, and I was thinking about as I was listening to some talk radio this week, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back, I think it makes a big difference because he doesn't have to be that elusive and get out of the pocket. He can do the check down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Williams is the same kind of check down player, and definitely Bell at this stage, I don't know what's going on with him. He's just not the same player. Whereas I think they're going to use Helaire a lot more in that safety valve role than they had the other two backs. Now, if he doesn't play, like you said, he's made great plays down the field, when he's running down the field. So I hear you. It's going to be an interesting game, and I think Leslie Frazier's going to have a really good game plan for him. So going to be two great games, action. We're on different sides here. Our best bets, I guess. I'm on Tampa. You're on Green Bay. Depending on the number, I do like the higher number at 4, which I got, or 3.5. You got 3.5 for Green Bay. And then I'm on KC. You don't have it as your best bet, I guess, but you're leaning to Buffalo. And then I like the under, but you like the over in KC Buffalo. So
I wouldn't say that. I think I would probably agree with your under call there.
Okay, but you like the over in the other game, Tampa, Green Bay?
I don't have an opinion on that total either, to be honest.
Okay.
I think I may have referenced the Mahomes rushing prop over.
Oh, gotcha. The one thing we've talked about too in some of these games, although we didn't hit the last week the Kansas City total. I mean, typically speaking, like I said, Kansas City comes out and they cover in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second half that's the problem. So I may look at that, especially like second half cover for Buffalo or something like that. All right, well, let's move on to the hoops now. Obviously we've had a busy week at work. I know I've been less busy as action, but what I've asked him to do this week is kind of generally reference his index. We've talked about it kind of briefly last week. Maybe if you can just do a quick overview of how you do it and how you adapt KenPom to get to the numbers that I see on my screen, but we'll just share verbally.
Sure. I mean, for those of you who don't know, KenPom is a data analytics guru who has been the number one name in college basketball advanced analytics. I think there's a few others out there nowadays, but he has a paywall site that allows you to look at all kinds of data from efficiency metrics through these 4 factors that he calls them, as well as 3-point shooting, 2-point shooting, free throws, all the way down the line. Yep. And so what I've done is taken KenPom's data and downloaded it and put together some formulas, which are fairly simple on the surface, just the efficiency margin on the offense and defensive end, and multiply by that team's average pace to get a number of possessions per game, and then come up with a total above or below 0, what you might expect any given game. But I've also put in some nuances from my own volition for rebounding adjustments and turnovers and effective field goal percentages. So in the end, I come up with a little bit different numbers than KenPom might have, but very close, as you'll probably notice across the board.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about in past years that the action index definitely gives a little more credence to rebounding, which, look, I'm all for it as a coach. Rebounding is critical in basketball, especially for extra possessions and defensive rebounding, just shutting down the opponent. So I like it. No surprise that we see the same top teams at the top, the Zags, Baylor, Iowa. But I wanted to talk about this team that you've got at number 4, and they're still in 6 in KenPom from what I can see, Houston. This is a team, out of the AAC that's been good for a couple years now. But I haven't been able to watch them yet. Have you been able to watch this team much? I mean, this team is doing some damage.
Yeah, I've watched them play a few times this season, bet on them a few times. They're 12-1, and I think even better. Oh, well, it's hard to do even better against the number, but
right.
They cover a lot of games too, and that's largely due to their rebounding. You can see on here they have a supreme rebounding edge over some of the competitors here in the top 10. And Kelvin Sampson's still there, as you mentioned. Yep. And their average scoring margin is 17.5 points per game, and average 42 rebounds a game, which is sky high.
That's incredible. Yeah, just to kind of reference what we're looking at, like the Zags are a great basketball team. This adjusted rebounding that he's got is like 1.99, but for Houston, it's over 3.04. So it's a full whatever rebound more or whatever possession on how that works. But that's an incredible margin there.
I've actually equated that to points per game. So their rebounding edge would give them an additional 3 points above their opponent.
Gotcha. Love it. The other team I wanted to talk about on this list that I don't know enough about yet, but I see it, yours is definitely higher than KenPom, but not that much, is Alabama in the SEC. We used to talk about them in football, but this team has obviously put together a squad, and it escapes me. I don't even know the coaches there right now. I know they switched coaches, right? Who's their coach now?
I got Nate Oates, the former
Nate
Buffalo
Oates.
coach.
Right. Yeah. That guy was a hell of a coach for the Bulls. So he's obviously making a difference in recruiting because this team is balling. You've got him at 7 in your index. It's 11 in KenPom. I don't know if you've been able to bet on these guys, but there must be – I mean, it's a weird year in the SEC because obviously Kentucky's not as good as they normally are. Even Auburn's taken a huge step back as the last couple of years, but Alabama's rising right up there with Tennessee.
Yeah, they are awesome, and I have been betting on them quite a bit. They've 8 covers in a row
There you
for
go.
Alabama, and this team, they just shoot the lights out.
Okay.
3-point shooting is just incredible, 36% from 3-point line, and their offensive efficiency is way up there at 114 points per 100 possessions.
That's a lot.
Herb Jones is a senior big man inside, and they've got a little guard named Quinterly who can shoot it as well. And they've got, his name escapes me, this super tall white guy who's a shooter as well. So I love betting on Alabama, and I think they are definitely going into the Final Four picture here.
Really? All right. Good to hear. Look at this. This just in. You got any futures on college basketball yet?
I have a Villanova ticket that I placed when they went into the COVID lockdown, just because I figured they were going off the radar, got them down to 15-1, which I thought was a little bit of value, but that is my only futures ticket at this time.
Gotcha. Good to know.
How about you?
Oh, no. I have nothing yet. I put together my spreadsheet finally. I did not update it again this week, unfortunately. Got a little busy, but I will. And just kind of not necessarily a programming note, but we do, because we obviously pointed for March. It looks like the NCAA has shifted their schedule a little bit for the tournament. It doesn't necessarily affect our trip directly, but it looks like the first 4 is moving to instead of 2 nights, they're going to do 1 day, and that's going to be on Thursday. So instead of usually opening week, to me the opening round is Thursday, Friday. Now it's going to be Thursday is the first 4, and then the opening round is really Friday, Saturday, with the round of 32 is going to be obviously Saturday or Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, weird. I don't really know why they did it that way. I imagine it has something to do with television, and travel.
Yeah.
But it's going to be weird to see opening day really happen on Friday this year.
Right, and as full disclosure, one of our guys, Night Ranger, was asking me, "What are we doing for Thursday games?" I'm like, "Did you know they're the first 4?" It's like, I mean, we can do something, but I don't want to be, paying a sports book a ton of money. We could do that on Saturday. We already got the Friday lineup, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's go in our games of interest this week via the KenPom's projection. This first one I'm a little bit confused by because I don't know the rest of the reference here action, so maybe you can help me. It says Michigan -2. I don't know which game we were talking about here. Maybe we got an erased. Is that against Purdue?
It is. Yeah, that's probably my bad.
That's okay. So you like Michigan going to Purdue?
Yeah, Michigan. This is a Friday night special.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Friday night action.
I could have sworn I wrote that in there, but my bad. Michigan going on the road to Purdue tomorrow night, Friday. And this one actually is a real line that's out now. Mm-hmm. Michigan -3, I've already bet. And I think that you're getting a little bit of a lower number than you normally would see just based on the recent victories that Purdue has run off 4 in a row now, starting with the win at Ohio State the other night, and then Penn State and at Michigan State last Friday night. So
yeah.
On the flip side, this Michigan team has been really good this season and beating teams very handily. So I think that they're going to go into West Lafayette and get a victory tomorrow night.
And full disclosure, everybody, that's picking against his alma mater. So this is definitely picking with his head here. He loves to boil her up, but not this year. So Wolverines all the way. And Juwan Howard, I guess he's got a team. He's definitely recruited really well. I mean, Beeline, when he left, I thought for sure there'd be a backstep, and maybe they had 1 year was a little bit squishy last year, but this year they're back and they're playing really well. Well, let's go into a couple games I like. I like Florida State against Clemson. They're hosting Clemson on Saturday the 23rd at 2 p.m. Central. And mainly I'm picking this, even though I love Florida State traditionally. I love this team, kind of like Action does for rebounding purposes. They always have big dudes that can play. But it's really more a fate of Clemson. I don't know what's going on with this team. I thought this team was really good. They're ranked in the top 20. Initially I was like, oh, their metrics are pretty good. They have gotten waxed in back-to-back games by 18 plus points or more. I don't know what the tailspin is, but I'm going to try to take advantage of it still if possible and jump on it. You're showing it as a 5-point game, but the real line is the 6, or what? How's that looking?
So the 6 is from Ken Palm.
Okay.
That's what Ken is projecting.
Gotcha.
And when I run it through my little machine here, I show it as Florida State -5. So not quite much value there, but I am right there with you. I personally bet on Clemson last night, and they puked all over themselves at Georgia Tech. So I think this one makes a ton of sense, and I'm going to be looking at Florida State on Saturday as well. I mean, this year, Clemson, really the only thing they have to hang their hat on is a really stout defense, which is a good defense, no doubt about it. But I'm sure you alluded to it earlier. They got destroyed by Virginia last weekend.
Yes.
Like 30 points.
Yes.
And something is clearly not right with this team. I would definitely be looking at the Seminoles as well.
Gotcha. Another one back to the Big Ten. I was looking at Wisconsin hosting Ohio State on Saturday at 3 p.m. Central. I really like the Badger team mainly because this team can score a little bit. They can shoot the ball. They actually can. They're used to we're always used to the Badger defense and kind of the pack line grind out teams, but this team actually can put the ball in the hole. Ohio State's a good team, definitely, but it looks like your numbers are a little bit less than what the Ken Palm line is, so maybe you're thinking there's some value on Ohio State?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, this Ohio State team, before the loss this week to Purdue, was that last night? I think it was last night to Purdue. They had run off some great wins of their own right, winning at Illinois, and then Northwestern at home and at Rutgers the game before that. Mm-hmm. So they've been playing a lot better lately, and I think that we mentioned it last week. It's likely due to the return of E.J. Liddell, who is their go-to guy. He really is a do-it-all forward and hits the glass for this team. But, Wisconsin is a good team. They've covered a couple games in a row after losing the big one to Michigan, and I certainly think they're tough at home. So I'd probably be passing on this one.
Wisconsin did cover for your Friday night action last week. We didn't report on our picks from last week, but they did. This one, it looks like you like Rutgers going to Indiana and Bloomington. So you're rating this game at Rutgers would actually be a favorite, but you're thinking Ken Palm's going to make it on Indiana's way up, 3 points. So you're taking those 3 points on the road at Indiana?
Yeah, this one's really just a value play. Rutgers has been one of my favorite teams, and despite taking a step back here this year, they're making a valiant effort right now at Penn State. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really just a fave Indiana at home, too. They've lost 2 straight games at home, and they just don't appear to be the same team this year in Bloomington that they are on the road. I heard a little story on the broadcast last week that Archie Miller told the guys that he doesn't seem like his team is focused while they're at home this season because they have so many distractions going on while they're at campus. And they play a lot harder and more cohesive on the road. So back Indiana on the road, and I'm going to fade them at home here with Rutgers. Gotcha.
Well, last game is the Big 12, which incidentally, and I guess I'm just kind of dumb or something, is the Big 12 still 12 teams? There's only 10 this year.
I don't think it's 12. I don't know how many that is.
I don't understand. Why don't they change it back? But anyway, they can't be the Big 10 because it's already the Big 10, but it's just weird that it's the Big 12 and it's 10 teams. But West Virginia is going to host Texas Tech. We kind of talked a little bit about Baylor, playing Texas Tech and Kansas. Finally, Baylor didn't cover a number against Kansas, but they did cover against Texas Tech on Saturday. In this case, I like West Virginia. They've come out a little bit sluggish in Big 12 play, but this team is really good in Ken Palm. Now, I'm not getting a lot of value here. In fact, you're thinking the Tech's a better team, even on the road. West Virginia and the Ken Palm number would be a 1-point favorite at home, whereas you think Tech should be favored by 1.5 or so.
Yeah. I mean, pretty close, especially when you're looking at a number that close to 0. I mean, this Tech team is good again on defense, 4th ranked in Ken Pom in defensive efficiency, and not quite as good on offense as they have been in years past. But Mac McClung, the little point guard from Georgetown, I think is their offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I'm going to be running to the window with Texas Tech. I know I went against them last week and had a winner with Baylor. And I do like the way this West Virginia team plays. They're scrappy like they always are. And they get after it defensively as well.
Yeah, and they can score this year. I mean, they're 21st in scoring. That's good. I mean, usually Hugs teams don't do that. It's quite the opposite. It's kind of like a Texas Tech model where it's all D and then a decent offense. That's why I like West Virginia here. But, I haven't seen them play. I want to see them play some more. These are kind of some interest games. And I kind of split last week for the most part. One of the other things that I've noticed, action, and we've, maybe alluded to it in last week's episode, man, there's a lot of postponements. I'm looking up and down the scoreboard, and even 2 or 3 of the games that I talked about last week, 2 of the games didn't get played, COVID. So it's a real deal. I'm really curious to see how they're going to deal with that going forward. They can't really play all those games. They may just kind of cancel them at some point, but it's got to be tough to handicap when you're like, okay, what's going on? Is this guy coming off a COVID thing? Or so it adds another wrinkle to our analysis here.
Yeah, I know in years past, you and I have talked about looking ahead at some of these weekend matchups, and not just for the podcast, but just looking at schedules and understanding where spots might be ahead, and days and a week ahead even sometimes. But this year it's much more difficult to do that with games potentially getting canceled. I'm finding myself just looking at games about 24 hours in advance this season.
Right. I think that's what you're going to have to do, because I was disappointed. That UCLA-Oregon matchup got, canceled. I was looking forward to that. And it's like some teams don't even play for a week and a half, sometimes 2 weeks. So it's weird. I wanted to ask you one more question about the NFL. Sorry, I didn't think of this at that point. So at this point, you're probably at the point with, like me, you might have a couple of futures tickets on the line. So just as a strategy, for some of our listeners, let's say you have a ticket on, say, Green Bay and Kansas City, the 2-1 seeds, and this is to win the Super Bowl. So, is there kind of a smart strategy on approaching it? Would you hedge this week or next week? I mean, how are you approaching that in any way in terms of hedging those future bets on the NFL champion?
I have a Kansas City ticket as well. I think it's $350, and my initial reaction to your question is it's really largely dependent on the number that you have. I think if you're talking about a ticket that's worth plus 500 or more, it gives you a lot more opportunities. If you're a 1 unit flat better, if you have a chance to win 5 units in one bet, you certainly probably get into that range where you want to look at hedging so you can lock in a profit.
Right.
Of course, it also depends on if they're a heavy favorite. Like in that case, Kansas City is certainly a favorite this week on the money line, and likely would be next week as well against Tampa or Green Bay. So it makes it a little bit more difficult when you're looking at a team like that. On the other side, I also have a ticket on Tampa to win the NFC. I think it's also $350, coincidentally.
Right.
And Green Bay is like a minus 180 favorite on the money line. So I'm just going to let it ride and see what happens.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because, to me, it's like, okay, obviously I have a small bet on, Tampa to win the game. But, Green Bay being the favorite, and I already have the Kansas City ticket in my pocket, maybe I roll the money line. But like you said, it's minus 180 or something. So I'm basically putting down 2 units to get to roll it. I've heard that you should always roll the money line or something if you're in lieu of futures. I just wasn't sure at what point. I should have probably asked you last week at what point. I obviously had both Baltimore and the Saints, and so those guys kind of burned out on the side. I'm imagining with this group of players, like, I don't know, I guess I didn't even look if I would think Buffalo would be the lowest likely, but maybe it's Tampa because they're the heaviest favorite at this point, but not really sure.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is look at end-game strategies. If for some reason the Chiefs get out to a pretty big lead, you might get a juicy number on the Buffalo Bills or vice versa.
Sure, absolutely. All right. Well, kind of a short episode this week. They'll be short for another week or two. We're kind of trying to shrink it down. Not as much football. I think we'll switch to college basketball in a couple weeks. But thanks for listening, and check us out at the Side Action Pod on Twitter and on YouTube, and check me out at Wegspool on Instagram and on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at 31sroberts.
All right, everybody. Enjoy the great weekend of football, and it should be some great games ahead.
Yep.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Side Action Podcast. We appreciate all of your listens, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you all again next week on Thursday for some more hot picks and side action. Side Action Podcast, its owners and associates take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the show hosts or their guests. Statements or show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of this podcast, and opinions between talk show hosts may conflict. Individuals following the advice given on the podcast accept their own risk of losses from wagers made. As the Side Action Podcast, its owners, hosts, associates, or guests will not guarantee any advice given. The opinions and advice given on the Side Action Podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Intro and outro and transition music credits. Song titles Jerry 5 and District 4 by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.org. Licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0. creativecommons.org/licenses/by 3.0.